Hi everyone, my name is Ike. This is Eddie Helps, and today what we're going to be going over is how to clean your clogged drain. So I'm just going to rattle off a couple things that might actually cause your sink to stop up. It could be soap scum, it could be hair, or it could be even toothpaste. Just anything that might fall into the drain or be flushed into the drain during normal use. Now what happens when these things get flushed into the drain is you have a buildup of scum and other type of organic matter that actually causes smells, and it can just get really icky. All of this scum and buildup turns into biofilm, which is actually the very thing that usually clogs up a drain, if it's not hair. So let's talk about how to keep your drain from becoming clogged. You want to make sure that you don't flush any hair down the drain. Another thing you could do is just run water. If you simply flush your drain every once in a while, that'll keep all of that bacteria and anything else, the slime that goes into the drain, from becoming lodged in the drain and causing a stoppage. Next, let's talk about the tools that you're going to need for the job. So one, you'll definitely need a pair of pliers. The pliers are going to be used to take apart the parts under the sink to get to the drain. You're going to need something really long, so it could be a screwdriver or it could be a coat hanger. Just something that's long and rigid that you can stick into the drain, and we'll get to that part. And another tool that you're going to need is you're going to need a plunger. That'll be used as our first step to trying to unclog the drain. So let's talk about why you need the plunger. The plunger is going to be the first thing that you should try to do to clean your drain. What you're going to do is actually fill the sink up with water and plunge it as if though you're plunging a toilet. This is going to be the first and easiest thing to start with. If you clean the drain using a plunger, great. If not, we'll talk about what you'll have to do next. Looks a little bit better, but it could be better, guys. So what we're gonna do next is actually go underneath the sink and take apart the P-trap and all the drain assembly and clean it out physically. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna put a bucket under there. You could use a vase, anything you can to catch water, because we're taking this apart, and this P-trap here has water in it. So the next thing we're gonna do is take apart this nut and this nut. What that's gonna do is allow us to actually pull the P-trap apart. These two nuts tighten against the drain assembly and it holds everything together. So they'll be the first things we need to take apart. Put the pliers right on the nut and turn it to the left, counterclockwise. Now we want to do the top nut and do the same thing. Once you've got it loose with your pliers, the next thing you're gonna do is just take the nuts off by hand, just like that, nice and easy. As you can see, we're already putting our bucket to use here. It's catching all of the water that's coming from the P-trap. Now that you've got the two nuts loose, you can go ahead and just pull the P-trap right on off. Now, it is a little tight to pull off, guys, so you want to be careful not to just pull as hard as you can. Just be gentle and work it down. I like to twist it back and forth. It helps relieve some of that resistance, and you get it off just like that. So I can already see that there's hair in this P-trap here. So what that tells me is that there's going to be hair also stuck in the pop-up assembly. You can see the strand of hair actually going up into it. So what that means is not only will we have to clean out the P-trap, we'll also have to clean out this, and I'll show you how to do it. We'll set this to the side for now, and we'll focus on just the pop-up assembly, and then we'll actually clean this out. The next thing we want to do is disassemble this nut back here. This holds the linkage assembly together, and it's going to be in the way for when we try to actually clean the pop-up assembly. So we go ahead and loosen this nut. A lot of times these things are just hand tight, so you can just do it by hand. And you just take it out just like that. The next thing we're gonna have to do is actually pull the pop-up out of the pop-up assembly. So you just take and use your fingernail and pull it right on up. Just like that. We'll set this to the side and we're gonna clean this off later. So we'll take this toilet paper, there's just a bundle of toilet paper here, shove it in there like that, and then I'll take my screwdriver and just push it through the drain. Look at that. So you can see all of the hair All that buildup was all stuck in the pop-up assembly. Next we want to do is clean off the pop-up. You can see it has all of that biofilm, that gunk that's just on the pop-up. We want to clean that off so that it doesn't clog up right away when we put it back together. And then we want to clean out the P-trap. Now this is pretty simple. This doesn't have a whole lot of biofilm in it or any sort of any gunk. Most of it looks like it was just hair that was causing the sink to drain slow. But what I like to do is flush this. So I'll show you how to flush it an easy way. There we go. So it doesn't need to be perfect. We just want to get a bulk of that gunk off of there so when we put it back together, we increase our chances for success. Next, we have the P-trap. So when it comes to the P-trap, what I like to do is I actually like to just take and wipe off the edges here. The edges of the P-trap here are where it seals to the rest of the pipe. So you have that beveled edge there. That actually creates the seal to the other end of the pipe. And then I want to clean off the threads and make sure the threads are clean as well. So that's what I'm going to do. We'll just wipe both of these ends here and get all of that stuff off of there. That way we make sure we have a nice good seal. So the way that we're going to clean and flush the inside of this thing out is actually we're just going to hook it back up. We know that it was stopped up with hair before. That's it. If it was something greater, we would pretty much take it outside, run a hose through it. But in this case, we don't need to do that because as it turns out, this P-trap is not all that dirty. So we can just hook this back up and run a ton of water through it. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we also want to make sure we clean off the pipe threads back here as well. This is what the P-trap is ultimately going to attach to, so we want to make sure that we have a good seal here as well. Like I said, doesn't need to be perfect. We just want to get a bulk of it off. That's good enough. Now we're going to take our P-trap and reattach it to the drain. Now, one thing that I like to use whenever I reattach any sort of drain is some sort of pipe thread sealant. What you're going to do is just take it and paste it against the bevel and against the threads. The same goes for the threads that are back here. Now it looks messy right now, but that's okay. Put the drain back up where it was. Now that you've got everything lined up, you'll see that the pipe is resting in place where it should be. It shouldn't be off to the side or anything like that. You want to make sure everything is lined up perfect before you try to put the nuts back on. So take your time at this step. Don't rush this step. If you rush this step, you might risk actually breaking something. So take your time. After you've got it lined up, you want to take the nut back here and just tighten it up. Just get it hand tight. Okay, I'd say that one's tight enough. Next, you want to tighten the top nut. Now that that's hand tight as well, we're going to go ahead and give it a small crank with a pair of pliers. Align your pliers, give it a small crank. Definitely make sure you don't over tighten them. We can test it afterwards and see where we're at then. Now we're going to take the pop-up and shove it into the sink and reconnect the pop-up rod that goes into that hole there, which is the thing that we took out before back here. So this will essentially look like that when we're done, once this has been inserted into the sink. So next what we're gonna do is take the pop-up rod and actually shove it into the back of the pop-up assembly, pretty much doing everything we did before in reverse. And then we're gonna take and tighten that nut back there. Once we've got that nut hand tight, the next thing we're gonna do is make sure that everything is connected and operating like it should. We're gonna test to make sure that the pop-up pull rod is actually attached to the pop-up. And to do that, all we're gonna do is grab the pull rod and pull up and down. This confirms that the linkage assembly is connected like it should and that the pull rod is actually attached to the pop-up. Next, what we're gonna do is just tug on the pop-up to make sure that it's a good hook. Next, what we wanna do is just test to make sure that nothing is leaking. So what we're gonna do is just turn the water on and look under the sink and feel with our fingers to test for leaks. Now that we have the water running, what we're gonna do is actually take our hand and feel under the trap here. We're just gonna feel all of the connections that we just made to make sure no water is escaping at those points. You may actually miss a leak if you're looking for one, so it's best just to use your hand to see if there's any moisture that appears on your hands. So what I'd like to do as a final step to make sure we absolutely don't have any leaks is fill the sink completely up with water and then dump it all. This will confirm that there's no leaks on the trap and there's no leaks on the pop-up assembly. Okay, so now we know everything is draining perfectly. We saw the water go down. It went down a lot better than it did before. So we know that just removing that hair was enough to improve the way that the drain operated. Next, what we're gonna do is actually go under the sink and just do a final test on everything to make sure that we don't have any leaks. That was the whole reason why we filled the sink up, was to test drainage and to test for leaks. So that's what we're gonna do right now. And everything is bone dry. Now, I might be wearing gloves, but you'd still see water on the glove, so that's not an issue. And in this case, there is nothing. Lastly, what we're gonna do is take our rag and clean up anything else that we work with here and make sure everything looks nice and professional. Okay, I've shown you guys 2 ways to unclog your sink. If you found this helpful, please leave a comment below. Thanks for watching.